Well, let's not delay. Let's get right into these wonderful, wonderful mitzvahs that we have. There's an interesting writing in the oh, I should have had it up in the book of Proverbs that speaks to the aspect of how the Most High defines wickedness. And I want to bring that to you if I can get it here real quick. Let me see here. Yeah, there it is. Let me bring that up for you for a minute here. Come on, come on, come on. Ah. And I forget what chapter it's in, unless I just bring it. But I don't remember which chapter it's in. Let's see if I can find it here. You know, it's frustrating when technology just doesn't work for you when you want it to work. Let me paraphrase. In the book of Proverbs, the Most High says, those who honor, those who don't honor the Torah, he says they're wicked. And those who honor the Torah fight those who don't. So, as we talk about the mitzvahs, the Torah, he also says to us that the Torah is good. He says it's right and it's true. He also says that the Torah is a light or a lamp into your footsteps. So now, when we talk about the Torah, we understand that the Torah are the mitzvahs. When we talk about the Torah, we talk about the first 5 books of the scriptures. In the first 5 books of the scriptures, they have within them the compilation of all of the commandments, statutes, mitzvahs, precepts that the Most High has given to Hebrew Israel. Moshe tells us in his parting dissertation to Israel what his assignment was to them. That assignment that he had with them in chapter 4, he makes it very clear. My assignment was to teach you these commandments, mitzvahs, and these laws and these rulings. That was my assignment. My assignment was not to teach you the history of Israel. It wasn't for me to explain all the nuances that associated with Hebrew Israel as they functioned as a nation. That was part of our history. Over time, we have spent a lot of time teaching the nuances of the history of Israel and explaining all of the little subtleties that are associated with the community and the culture. That's not Torah. These mitzvahs that I'm teaching you or bringing to the forefront for your understanding, that's Torah. When we move out of the Torah and we start studying the prophets then begin to explain the deficits that Israel has in failing to abide by these. Explains to Israel the wickedness, the aggressiveness that they have done and that they do to each other, how you rob the poor, you murder each other, you treat everybody in the obstinance of what I've given you as a way of life for the nation. And on top of that, you have also abdicated me as being your Elohim, and you have fallen into idolatry. That's what the prophets do. The prophets then, at the behest of the Most High, explain the evil actions of Israel and tell them what the outcome is going to be for their failure to follow the mitzvahs and honor the Most High. He explains to them how the Most High feels about their idolatrous ways and their failure to walk in his mitzvahs. And then they explain what the action the Most High is going to do in relationship to that. You see, the idea of mitzvahs and precepts and rulings and ways, they all come with a penalty. And it's no different than what we have in our world today. We miss and don't follow the rules of the nation that we live in. It comes with a penalty. That's no different than the Most High. The difference between the nation that we live in and the Most High says, if you will repent and you will turn back to my mitzvahs and honor me as being your Elohim, then I will forgive you, as the prophet Ezekiel says. He says, if a wicked man turns from his wickedness back to righteousness, he then receives the blessings of the righteous. So the Most High rewards rightness, but he declares everything that doesn't follow in the concepts of the rulings and regulations that he's given for the nation to abide by. He refers to it as being wicked. There are two things that are a part of Hebrew Israel. Hebrew Israel was born in an idolatrous nation, and they were a nation before they had land. Isn't that interesting? They were a nation before they had land. Now, the same concept applies today. We are a nation of people. We have land, but the Most High has kicked us out of the land, so we're a nation with land, but without land. Make sense? We're just like our ancestors. And in this nation out here that we're in as a nation, spread all over the four corners of the earth, the Most High said, from the places that I have dispersed you, you will search for me and you will find me. And you will then turn back to me. Now, the aspect of the resolve is that the whole nation of Israel, that the Most High has numbered by the stars in the Shemayim and the sand in the Eretz, is a large number of individuals. But of that large number of individuals, he knows that the majority of them are not going to function and live by his mitzvahs and his rulings, which is one of the reasons why we have been expelled to the four corners of the earth and we're out here. With that comes the idea that in this exile that you're in, because you have done that, many of you are going to die in exile. And I'm going to call you wicked, and I'm not going to revive you and bring you back to the land in the day of redemption in the end of days. So now, this number, that's a number that no man can number, is now defined by the prophets as being a remnant. That which is a remnant is that which remains, or that which is left over. You go to the material shop and you buy yardage and you make your garment. After you made your garment, what's left over is a remnant from the garment. That's what the Most High is dealing with right now. He's dealing with the remnant. You and I have an opportunity to be a part of that remnant as long as we function according to his mitzvahs, rulings, precepts, and statutes, and turn back to him and allow him to be the only deity. We cannot have two deities. You know, my dad always used to say, anything with two heads is a freak. So, and the Most High has told us that he is our Elohim. There is none beside him, and there will be no alien Elohim after him. He's it. So we have to get out of the element of idolatry and turn back to the Most High and his mitzvah. This is the reason why these are so important to Hebrew Israel. Now, we are in this exile, and there are a lot of the mitzvahs that we cannot carry out in this exile. But we need to know what they are, so that in the day that we're redeemed, in the end of days, and go back to the land, these mitzvahs will be a part of our spirit. Recognize that we are made up of three components: body, soul, and spirit. The body returns to dust. It doesn't retain and it doesn't maintain any aspect of what it is that we're doing right now. The spirit, the pneuma, in which that we have the ability to inhale and exhale and breathe, which is spirit, goes back to the Most High who gave it. The essence of who you are, which is your soul, is like the hard drive in a computer. The hard drive in a computer, it gathers in and it stores information. And sadly to say, it's very difficult, even in a computer, to erase all the information that's stored on that hard drive. So your soul, the spirit of you, of who you really are, which is intangible, is the spiritual hard drive that takes in all the data and all the information that's associated with the Elohim that you and I love so dearly and believe in. And we learn and store in it his ways, his mitzvot, and the instructions that he's given to us, so that in the end of days, when he revivificates us, according to Daniel's writing in Daniel chapter 12 and verse 4, and in Ezekiel's dissertation about the valley of the dry bones, the hard drive will then be reconnected to the source, and the information in it will begin to populate it, and that hard drive or that soul will then be reconnected with a body, a whole body. What you are now, you will be again in the revivification. And so now that hard drive is going to populate the information that's in it. And as we hear the teachers, let's listen to Micah again. Micah says that the nations say, let us go up to Jerusalem, for the Torah of the Most High is being taught there. We will once again assemble in a place and a time when the things that we're talking about now are going to be taught in their purity. They will be explained totally, and we'll have the definite concepts of understanding, and we will be held accountable for our actions in relation to these mitzvahs and commandments that the Most High has given us. So you say, well, this is why I'm teaching them. This is why we have to talk about them. There's another concept within our historical document. King David, he said, I meditate upon these day and night. Well, what is the aspect of meditation? In order to meditate upon something, you have to know what it is. Corey Appleton and I talked about this past week in the podcast. Very interesting. And the analogy is very simple to understand. When you and I embrace something that we are learning and that we want to do, what do? You study it, and then you meditate upon what you have studied. And if it's really something that you really want to do, and you want to refine it, let me take a golfer that's very prominent, world renowned, and any athlete that's really good. The interesting thing about their craft is that they meditate up on their craft constantly. Michael Jordan doesn't become the greatest basketball player just by picking up the basketball when the season starts. Tiger Woods doesn't become the greatest golfer in our history by just picking up the golf club when he's getting ready to play a tournament. What is he doing? What do these people have in common? What they have in common is they're meditating, they're thinking about what their craft is going to require, and they meditate upon it and they try to refine it. You can't refine something that you don't know anything about. You can't meditate upon something that you don't know anything about. We have taught you culture. We have taught you history, but we have not taught you what to meditate upon so that it can be a part of your thought process day and night. That's why I'm going through these mitzvahs. And in this phase of the mitzvahs, I'm only dealing with bringing them to the fore so we know what they are. Once we know what they are, we will go back and now we'll start meditating upon the application of them. When I came into the Hebraic way, all I knew about the mitzvahs really was keeping the Sabbath, dietary laws, the Moedim, and somebody told me I wasn't supposed to cook the baby with the mama or the mama with the milk and something, all that. And I found out that was wrong. That was wrong. So we go through life, and you're supposed to start the Sabbath at sundown Friday. We found out that was wrong. So the problem being is when you meditate upon something, you figure out how to do it right. One of the things that athletes do in their meditation, if something is wrong, they meditate upon how to fix it. They don't keep doing the same thing over and over and doing it wrong. If it's wrong, they meditate, they think out, and they try to figure out how to fix it. By our studying the mitzvahs, we are figuring out how to fix it and how to come into compliance with the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Let's get to it. We have 20 of them again today that we're going to go through. Starting with number 499. This one is not on anybody's list of mitzvahs that I have looked at. And with that being said, that concerns me because the Ashkenazis who have put this list together that say there's 613, none of them agree with the list. Their lists are all different. So if their lists are different, what do you suppose there possibly could be? They're probably more or they're less. That's not what's important. The number is not important. What's important is that we're able to go through Scripture, find them, point them out, and make sure that we understand what is applicable to us in this exile that we're living in, moving forward, getting prepared for our day when we will be once again in the land. Starting in Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 20. 449, I've gotten to. The obligation to execute a woman who was found to be a prostitute. But if the charge is substantiated that the evidence for the girl's virginity could not be found, then they are to lead the girl to the door of her father's house, and the men of her town will stone her to death. It's a capital offense to be a prostitute in Israel. Was there somebody across the street who was a prostitute? Was John? Was there somebody across the street that was a prostitute? But they didn't stone her. Because she has committed in Israel the disgraceful act of being a prostitute while still in her father's house, in this way you will put an end to such wickedness among you. Now, this particular mitzvah comes out of the idea earlier in the text where a man decided that he was going to marry this girl, and he took her home, and he found out, in his mind, he found her not to be a virgin. But the father, we talked about this in our last teaching, the father and the mother had the evidence. I'm sorry, today we ain't trying to hold on to no evidence. And the father and the mother brought the evidence before the court of Israel to prove to the Israel that their daughter was a virgin, and the fact was that the man had just disliked the young lady, and he brought a false accusation against her, for which the mitzvah says if you bring a false report against a virgin that you have married and it becomes untrue, then you are tied to her for the rest of your life. So this particular mitzvah will happen in the land. Gonna be a lot more. Hey, listen. You know what's interesting with the text across the street? The text across the street always talks about heaven, but it don't tell you nothing about what you're going to do when you get there. The Hebrew text lets us know that we're going to land, we're going to live in land, and it tells us we're going to have a life in the land. A millennium? Yeah. Gonna be some folks getting married in the land. Might be some folks having more than one wife in the land. But all that's going to be going on in the land. Oh, we might be farmers in the land. We might be taking care of herds in the land. There's a lot of things that we're going to be doing. We're not going to just be, as Shirley Caesar sings, we're not just going to be walking around heaven all day. Doing what? Doing what? Have you ever seen the zombie movies? You ever seen the zombie movies? That's what that reminds me of. Walking around heaven all day. And there won't be any day or night. We'll just be walking around heaven all day. Hey, see, that doesn't measure up to what the Most High has planned for his people. Mitzvah number 500. This was not in anybody's list either. Prohibition chapter 22, verse 23, the obligation to execute adulterers. If a man is found sleeping with a woman who has a husband, both of them must die, the man who went to bed with the woman and the woman too. In this way, you will expel such wickedness from Israel. Show you right. Show you right. This one is not on anybody's list either. Mitzvah number 501, Prohibition chapter 22, verses 23 and 24. The obligation to execute adulterers continues. If a girl who is a virgin is engaged to a man, and another man comes up on her in the town and has sexual relations with her, that's rape, you are to bring them both out to the gate of the city and stone them to death. The girl, because she didn't cry out for help there in the city, and the man, because he has humiliated his neighbor's wife. In this way, you will put an end to such wickedness among you. Now, in Israel, the aspect of engagement and betrothal are almost the same. When a man or a woman are betrothed to each other, that betrothal is the same as a marriage. So now a man comes upon this woman and he has sexual relationships with her. She does not cry out for help. It does not matter if she can be heard or not. The fact is that she's made an effort to cry out. If she doesn't make an effort to cry out, then she is culpable in the act and subject to the death penalty. That will take place in the land. Hey, ain't gonna be no raping in the Father's land. Ain't gonna be no court appearance. No court appearance. Well, no. Mitzvah number 502, Prohibition chapter 22, verse 25 and 26, the obligation to execute a rapist. But if the man comes upon the engaged girl out in the courtyard and the man grabs her and has sexual relationship with her, then only the man who had intercourse with her is to die. You will do nothing to the girl. Why? Because she has done nothing deserving of death. Why? And the text goes on to say, why she has not done anything deserving of death is because she cried out. She made an effort to dispel the action that was upon her. That will take place in the land. Mitzvah number 503, Prohibition chapter 22, verse 28 and 29. The obligation upon one who violates a woman to marry her. If a man comes upon a girl who is a virgin but who is not engaged, and he grabs her and has sexual relationship with her, and they are caught in the act, and the man who had intercourse with her must give the girl's father 1.25 pounds of silver shekels, and she will become his wife, because he humiliated her, and he may not divorce her as long as he lives. Most High nations gonna function right, ain't they? Gonna function right everywhere. And this particular mitzvah here is one that is functional everywhere that we live in the land, or it should be, even though we don't necessarily practice it. It's one that should be practiced even in exile. Mitzvah number 504, Prohibition chapter 23, verse 1, the prohibition for a man to take his father's wife. A man is not to take his father's wife. That's violating his father's rights. This is everywhere we live. You don't have sexual relationships with your mother. This is a mitzvah right here that is written upon your hard drive of your mind. Nobody needs to teach you that and tell you that's wrong. Your consciousness tells you that's wrong. You don't need a mitzvah to tell you this. Okay? That's the reason why Masha said it's not even in your mouth to do it. It's there. It's on your brain. You don't do this. So while those of you that are trying to escape the Father's mitzvahs and say they've been done away with, he did something that's very interesting. He fixed it so you could not do away with his mitzvahs. He wrote it up on your heart and your mind, and it's in your mouth to do it. So you can't escape them. So tell Creflo Dollar that the Father's mitzvahs have not been done away with, and tell him that, oh, he's got some Father's mitzvahs written on his hard drive too. They're in his mouth to be able to speak them. Oh, I just don't like people who want to discredit the absolute all-existent one. It just angers me. Particularly when you speak out of a point of ignorance. A lot of things that a lot of pastors said are just plain downright ignorant. And the ignorance comes from the fact that they don't know what they're saying, and they don't want to know what they're saying, but they want to pontificate upon the Father whom they don't know, and you cannot know the Father absent his word. Can't. And his word is not across the street. That's not his word. You're going to tell me that a nation who are liars, a nation who hate the absolute all-existent one and his people are going to write a narrative for the Most High, who has said I'm not human, that I should lie or change my mind, that he's going to wake up 400 years after Malachi and have a nation that hates him write a dissertation for his people? Come on, man. That don't make no sense. Yeah. I realize in one aspect that they can't help themselves. And let me say this to you. The majority of most pastors of churches are individuals who grew up in a church, who grew up in a church, who grew up in a church, who learned from their pastors, and they start a church and may regurgitate the same thing that they learned from the past. And all of it's wrong. The second group of pastors are those who have acumen. They've been to the seminaries. And in the seminaries, they have taught you the theology across the street. They haven't taught you the Father's word. So when you talk about you're teaching the Father's word, if you're not teaching the volume of information that resides in the Hebrew document, that's the Father's word. The word across the street is the word from the Greeks and the Romans. That's not the Father's word. Is it not called the Greek New Testament? Come on. That didn't take a rocket science to figure that out. And then you hop across into the history book of Hebrew Israel, and you treat it like it's like you're at the smorgasbord. You pick and choose what you want to take out of it that's beneficial to you at the time. That's not how the Most High works. Back to the mitzvahs. Oh, gotta get a breath here. Mitzvah number 505, Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 2, the prohibition for a eunuch to marry a Hebrew woman. Now we have to understand this text. A man with crushed or damaged private parts may not enter the assembly of Yahweh. We have to understand what the assembly of Yahweh is. He's not saying that you can't come to congregation. He's not saying that you can't go to the temple. What he's saying is that you're not to marry a Hebrew woman because his ability to procreate would cause a woman to compromise her conduct with her own husband, because the woman is part of the assembly. Can't marry a person who can't procreate, cannot marry a Hebrew woman. That's what the assembly is all about. If you don't study it, then you get the wrong idea and the wrong concept of what the Most High is saying. So now what you're saying, and let's play this out from logic, okay? It's not the man's fault that he has crushed or damaged private parts. Maybe he's born that way. So now you're telling me if I'm born that way, I can never be a part of Israel and I haven't done anything wrong? So the Most High is going to hold me accountable for how I'm born? Does that make sense? No. So there has to be a deeper logical answer to that particular question. You're not to marry, because now, think about this. What was Sarah's problem? She was infertile, or she couldn't bear children, and it became a problem with Israel that she gave her husband to, what's the girl's name? I can't even think. Hagar, yeah, I got Rahab in my mind. Hagar, so that he could procreate and bear children, because it was kind of a look down upon if a man did not bear children. So this is what this is all about. 506, Deuteronomy 23 and 3, the prohibition for a Mazer to marry a Hebrew woman. A Mazer may not enter the assembly of Yahweh, nor may his descendants down to the 10th generation enter the assembly. The word mamzer is related to a person who was born as a result of a forbidden relationship, such as incest and or forbidden relationships. That individual enter into the assembly of Yahweh means these persons are forbidden to marry people of the assembly. They can marry outside the Hebrew faith, but they can't marry inside the Hebrew faith. And the Most High gives a definite time down to the 10th generation. That's what that's about. It's about incest, and it's about relationships that are forbidden by which a child is born. Mitzvah number 507, Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 4, prohibition to marry an Amorite or a Moabite woman. Naomi or Moabi may enter the assembly of Yahweh. Once again, same thing applies. Nor may any of his descendants down to the 10th generation ever enter the assembly of Yahweh, because they did not supply you with food and water when you were on the road leaving Mitzrayim, and because they hired Baalim, the son of Beor, from Petor and Amram Naharayim to put a curse on you. So therefore, you are not to allow them to cohabit your Hebrew people. That's in the land. One of the reasons it's in the land because we don't know today who the Ammoni are, and we don't know who the Moab are. We might be married to some of these people. Where are we? In exile. And we may have made it. We're probably out down to the outside the parameters of the generational time. Mitzvah number 506, Davarim, chapter 23, verse 7. The prohibition to extend an offer to peace to the people of Ammon and Moab. So you are never to seek their peace or well-being as long as you live. They weren't concerned about you living. They wouldn't supply you with life substance, so why should you be concerned about them? See, the Most High, you see, the Most High loves everybody. No, he doesn't. He doesn't like anybody who does things to his wife. He's just like you. Do you like anybody who does wrong to your wife? Husbands? No. If somebody does something wrong to your wife, no. Most High's the same way. So you can't go across the street and say that he so loved the world. No, he doesn't. He's very particular about who he loves. You're supposed to love me because God so loved the world. No, he didn't. Mitzvah number 507, Davarim 23, 8 through 9, the prohibition to reject marriage to Edomites. But you are not to detest an Edomite. That's Esau, the Edomites, because he is your brother. And you are not to detest an Egyptian, because you lived as a foreigner in his land. The third generation of children born to them may enter the assembly of Yahweh. Once again, that aspect of assembly, entering the assembly, means you may cohabit with them. Now, while the Most High is going to destroy these people, as he has spoken about in the book of Obadiah, the aspect of Hebrew Israel marrying and cohabiting with them, when you marry a person outside the Hebrew faith, the idea is that they will become a part of who you are. Let's remember something. All of the wives of Hebrew Israel were not Hebrews. Rachel was not a Hebrew. Rebecca was not a Hebrew. But when they married Yitzchak and Yaakov, they embraced the Hebrew way and they became Hebraic women of the Most High. This is everywhere that we live, even in this exile. Mitzvah number 508, Davarim chapter 23, verse 11, a prohibition for an unclean person to enter the Temple Mount area. When you are in camp, this applies to war, and at war with your enemies, you are to guard yourself against anything bad. If there is a man among you who is unclean because of a nocturnal emission, he is to go outside the camp. He is not to enter the camp. He's got to clean himself. He's got to wash himself. Nocturnal emissions are found to be unclean in the presence of the Most High. This applies in times of war and also in the land. Mitzvah number 509. Davarim 23:13, the obligation to prepare a place for performing bodily needs. This is also an aspect of war. Or if you happen to be camping out, even in this exile that we are in, If you go camping out and you are a Hebrew Israelite, you have to realize the Most High is also in your presence. So he says, also you are to have an area outside the camp to use as a latrine. You must include a trowel with your equipment, and when you relieve yourself, you are to dig a hole first and afterwards cover your excrement. Why? Because I, the Most High, walk in your presence. When at war or when camping. Mitzvah number 510, Prohibition chapter 23, verse 16. The prohibition regarding the return of an escaped slave. Now, this particular mitzvah was left out of the slave Bible. This is not this mitzvah that speaks about what happens when your slave runs away. If a slave has escaped from his master and taken refuge with you, you are not to hand him back to his master. Allow him to stay with you in whichever place suits him best among your settlements. Do not mistreat him. So in the slave Bible, they left that one out. Because we know in slavery, if the slave ran away, somebody was going to catch him and take him back to the master. And if he ran, they're going to take him back to the master. So that one was left out of their book. This will happen in the land. Mitzvah number 511, Prohibition chapter 23, verse 18, the prohibition to be intimate with a woman without marriage. No woman of Israel is to engage in ritual prostitution. There is not to be a promiscuous woman among the daughters of Israel, everywhere we live in the land. Mitzvah number 512, Prohibition chapter 23, verse 18. The prohibition for a man to be intimate with another man. No man of Israel is to engage in ritual homosexual prostitution wherever we live in the land. Mitzvah number 513, Prohibition 23:19, the prohibition to bring a harlot's wage to the house of Yahweh as an offering. Nothing earned through heterosexual or homosexual prostitution is to be brought into the house of Yahweh Eloheka in fulfillment of any vow. For both of these are abhorrent to Yahweh Eloheka. The fulfillment of any vow is a commitment that you and I have made to bring an offering to the Most High. If you earned or you were paid for the act of prostitution, that offering, and you're going to make an offering, you cannot bring that offering to the Most High. It's abhorrent to him. That's what that means. Mitzvah number 514, Prohibition chapter 23, verse 20, prohibition to borrow on interest from a Hebrew. You are not to lend an interest to your brother, no matter whether the loan is for money, food, or anything else that can earn interest. So, if I borrow some money from you, you can't charge me interest. And we Hebrews are just really not of the mindset to be loaning money. And one of the reasons why we're not in the interest or business of wanting to loan money is because we Hebrews just don't understand that what you borrowed, you're supposed to pay back. And we get this lapse of memory. And so in this lapse of memory, what we do, instead of paying you back the money, we just, every time we see you coming, we go. one family that borrowed money from one of the congregants here, and they moved out of state, didn't pay him back. And then when they left the place that they were coming back, they wanted to come back. They couldn't come back here because they owed money. So they moved somewhere else. Isn't that interesting? We're not supposed to function that way, Hebrews. Can I get an amen? Mitzvah number 515, Prohibition chapter 23, verse 21, the obligation to lend on interest to a foreign person who needs a loan. To an outsider, you may lend at interest, but to your brother, you are not to lend at interest, so that Yahweh Eloheka will prosper you in everything you set out to do in the land you are entering in order to take possession of it. Now, let's get clarity here, okay? Let's get clarity here. So, Brother Yochanan is considered to be in Hebrew Israel a foreigner that has joined with Israel. So in the fact that he has joined with Israel, this particular rule here would apply because he's part of our family. However, a person who has not joined with Israel, that's a foreigner, we can lend to him with interest and be in perfect state, but we can't do it within the family of Israel. I don't care if it's a Hebrew or if it's a foreigner that is joined with Israel, because now he's a part of Israel and the prior rule applies everywhere we live. So if I own the bank, and you came into my bank to borrow some money, I'd have to give it to you interest-free. But if Johnny come walking home, walked into my bank and he wasn't, I can charge him interest. That's how that works. Mitzvah number 516, Prohibition 23:22. The prohibition to delay one's offering. When you make a vow to Yahweh Eloheka, you are not to delay in fulfilling it. For Yahweh Eloheka will certainly demand it of you, and your failure to do so will be a sin. What's a sin? Breaking Torah. So now let's understand what the mitzvah is saying. If you have committed to making and giving an offering or your tithe to the Most High, you are not to delay in fulfilling it. If you delay in fulfilling it, your failure would do so, you will have broken Torah. Now, let's go further with this. If you know that you're supposed to and you don't, the same rule applies, because you now have knowledge of something that you're supposed to do that you're not doing. And at some point, watch this now, let's go to the rule of precedent. When a precedent is established, then it's enforced. So now, if once you did because you knew you were supposed to and you stopped, this rule applies because you knew you were supposed to. Are we teaching Torah? As we say, as Kohanim Appleton has gotten me to say, I'm just reading. But I have to read with explanation. And the explanation is not mine. It's an understanding that comes with the text. Mitzvah number 517, Prohibition 23:24. The obligation to fulfill one's vow. If you choose not to make a vow at all, that will not be a sin for you. So now, if you choose not to make the vow of giving, then although there is a Torah portion that allows us, tells us we're supposed to, but if you make a vow and make a promise to the Most High to do something, and you don't make that vow, then it's not a sin. But if a vow passes your lips, you must take care to perform it according to what your voluntary vow to Yahweh Eloheka, what you promised in words spoken aloud. So if you make a vow, we're supposed to do what? Do not defer to keep it. Everywhere we live. Mitzvah number 518, Adulteress chapter 23, verses 25 to 26, the obligation allowed to hire a worker to eat from the vineyard. When you enter your neighbor's vineyard, this is agricultural kinds of things, you may eat enough grapes to satisfy your appetite, but you're not to put any in your basket. When you enter your neighbor's field of growing grain, you may pluck ears with your hand, but you're not to put a sickle to your neighbor's grain. This will happen in the land. We can't spiritualize this. We can't make it anything but what it is. Otherwise, if we put it into a spiritual context, it would read like this. When you enter your neighbor's house, you may take all of the assets that you want that would satisfy your appetite. That's how that would read. So we can't spiritualize this particular mitzvah, because guess what? That ain't gonna happen. I can't come into your house and say, "Oh, I like this. Oh, I like this. Oh, I like this," until my appetite is satisfied. We're taking all that satisfies my appetite that you have, that's yours. So that's not going to work in the land. It's agricultural. Mitzvah number 519. And I think this is the last one. Prohibition chapter 24 and verse 1. The obligation for one who wishes to divorce his wife to do so with a get. Suppose a man marries a woman and consummates the marriage, but later finds her displeasing because he has found her offensive in some respect. He writes her a divorce document, gives it to her, and sends her away from his house. This particular mitzvah is carried out everywhere in the land, and in our current exile, it's called going to court and getting a document of divorce. That's what it's called. Oh, so the father's mitzvahs have been done away with. So if the father's mitzvahs have been done away with, then you can't divorce your wife. And every time you divorce your wife, you have given her a get, and you have participated in a law that is written in the Most High's word. Ain't that interesting? Well, that's the conclusion of our 20 that we're offering to you today. We'll offer another 20 the next time we come. Don't forget that In Defense of the Messiah is available to you on Amazon in a hardback and also in the Kindle reader. It's a very good read. It explains a lot of the things that are germane to who the Messiah is and who the Messiah is not. Also, you can tune into our podcast by downloading the podbean.com app, or get the app, look for Hebrews in Exile. Also on the iPod, you can find it there, or anywhere where you listen to podcasts. Hebrews in Exile. Well, I say to you, Yerekaka, Yahweh Vishnu, Ya'er, Yahweh Pranavaleka, Vekaduka, Yesaya, Yahweh Pranavaleka, Vayasham, Vakha, Shalom. May to each one of you, may Yahweh bless you and keep you. To each one of you, may Yahweh make his face to shine on you and show you his favor. To each one of you, may Yahweh lift up his face towards you and give you shalom. Shalom.